You won't believe what Elon Musk said to Peter Navarro behind closed doors. The morning sky over Washington was a pale steel gray, a fitting reflection of the atmosphere awaiting behind the closed doors of the Roosevelt Room. The air was thick with unspoken tension as Elon Musk, fresh off a red-eye from Los Angeles, stepped into the White House. He wore his usual subdued uniform, a tailored black suit, slightly wrinkled from the flight, and no tie. But his eyes were sharp, laser-focused. This wasn't his first time here. He had walked these halls before, sometimes welcomed, sometimes merely tolerated, but today felt different. This wasn't about rockets, or energy, or satellites. It was about something far more mundane yet devastating to his companies: tariffs. Peter Navarro stood near the far end of the table, arms crossed tightly over his chest, his expression unreadable but visibly tense. He was already mid-sentence, speaking to a group of officials and advisors, when Elon walked in. The words Musk caught mid-air were enough to make his blood cool, because frankly, if Tesla can't handle a little economic nationalism, maybe it shouldn't be building cars at all. It wasn't an opening line, it was a slap. The chairs creaked under the weight of expectation as Elon took his seat, stone-faced. He didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, he scanned the binder that had been placed in front of him. Inside, projections, charts, and a carefully worded summary of new proposed steel and aluminum tariffs. A 25% spike on imported metals. It wasn't just a blow to Tesla. It was a direct hit. What no one in that room knew yet, except Elon, was that his global supply chain was already strained. Shanghai's plant was running at 80%. Battery shipments from Germany had stalled. This tariff would snap the final thread. Navarro was relentless. These tariffs are about American jobs, American manufacturing, and American strength, he said, pacing slowly. Elon here says innovation is the future, but there's no innovation if we keep letting foreign competitors eat our lunch. Still, Elon said nothing. And then the unexpected happened. His phone buzzed on the table, an alert. At first, he ignored it. But when it buzzed again, 3 times in quick succession, he glanced at the screen and his jaw tensed. A SpaceX prototype had exploded during a static fire test at Starbase, minutes ago. His fingers twitched, but he didn't reach for the phone. Not here. Not in front of them. He looked up at Navarro, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Elon, Navarro said, almost smug now. Any thoughts? Yes, Musk said finally, his voice low but cutting through the room like a blade. Your policy doesn't create jobs. It creates ghosts. Ghosts of factories that can't adapt. Ghosts of companies that can't build at scale. Ghosts of progress. Gasps echoed from one end of the table. But that wasn't the moment that would define the day. Not yet. Because just as the room began to bristle with rebuttals and whispers, an aide burst through the doors, flushed, panting, eyes wide. He leaned into Navarro's ear and whispered something that made Navarro's face drain of color. And then, silence. Everyone was staring. Navarro, stiff and cold, slowly turned back to the group. We've had a breach. A security breach. The room froze. Elon's gaze sharpened. But what no one expected, not even Musk, was that the breach had originated from a private server inside one of Navarro's own economic strategy offices. And the leaked documents? They would reveal a plan far more sinister than just tariffs. The moment the words "security breach" left Navarro's mouth, the air in the Roosevelt Room turned electric. Advisors exchanged panicked glances, phones vibrated under the table, and even the Secret Service detail at the door subtly repositioned, as if anticipating something more than a cybersecurity issue. Elon Musk remained still, his fingers gently folded together in front of him. But internally, calculations were running, faster than any Tesla supercomputer. He had seen this before. The calm before the freefall. And the look on Navarro's face. That wasn't concern. That was fear. It took less than 8 minutes for a full lockdown to be ordered on the West Wing's data channels. No phones, no emails. Aides moved quickly to retrieve devices, and suddenly the boardroom that had been the stage for aggressive policy arguments turned into a digital crime scene. Elon's phone was taken, but not before he got one last look at the push alert he'd received earlier. SpaceX Fireball caught on satellite, source indicates unscheduled ignition. His mind split in two. One half was racing through damage control at Starbase. The other was frozen on Navarro's face. What the hell was going on? Then a folder was slipped onto the table, thick and unlabeled. It came from the aide who had whispered to Navarro. No one said a word as Peter opened it. He scanned the top page, then the second. And then, almost involuntarily, he looked directly at Elon Musk. The look wasn't political anymore, it was personal. What is this? Musk asked flatly. Navarro didn't answer. Instead, he pushed the folder to the middle of the table. A younger economic staffer, pale and visibly nervous, opened it, and the group collectively leaned in. Inside were 37 pages, blueprints, memos, and communications, outlining a confidential internal proposal. The title on the cover page sent shivers down every spine in the room. Project Red Fence, Economic Isolation Strategy for Emerging Tech Threats. Elon's name appeared 6 times on the first 2 pages alone. Threats, Navarro said slowly, the word almost bitter on his tongue. That's what they're calling you now, Elon. Not innovators. Not visionaries. Threats. The proposal had been circulated through a private policy forum, a classified economic strategy group composed of trade hawks, steel lobbies, and defense contractors. And while it hadn't yet been approved, it laid out a disturbing plan: aggressive regulatory targeting of companies that posed asymmetrical leverage risk to U.S. economic influence. Tesla's battery factories. SpaceX's global satellite networks. Even Neuralink. They were all labeled as potential economic sovereignty liabilities. Navarro watched Musk like a hawk. I didn't write this, he said carefully. But it came from someone in the Economic Security Council. Elon didn't blink. Someone who wants me boxed in. Or buried. A tense silence followed. Then another unexpected moment shattered the room. A second aide rushed in, whispering urgently into the ear of the National Trade Coordinator seated beside Navarro. Her eyes widened. Then she stood and addressed the room. Mr. Musk, there's something else. She turned to the group. A document just hit an encrypted message board monitored by our internal threat division. It's already spreading. The file was titled, Operation Gravity Kill, Corporate Containment Strategy, Phase 1 Execution Timeline, Q2 2025. Elon's jaw clenched. That wasn't a policy plan. That was a takedown schedule. And the most jarring part, Tesla's Shanghai Gigafactory was listed under Strategic Destabilization Targets, with a suggested date for regulatory strikes. In 4 days. Whispers erupted. Navarro went pale. But Elon. He stood, quietly, calmly, like a man who had just decided something dangerous. He looked around the room, at the advisors, at Navarro, at the pages sprawled across the polished mahogany table. I didn't come here to fight over tariffs, he said, voice steady. But now I see what this really is. And then he leaned forward, resting both hands on the table, and delivered a sentence that would be quoted by political insiders for years to come. If this country wants a war with the future, I'll make sure it's one they remember. What happened after that? Even more unexpected. Because someone in that room was already working with Elon. Someone who had been feeding him information from inside Navarro's circle. And when they revealed themselves, alliances shifted, and Musk's next move would leave everyone stunned. The room was still reeling from Musk's declaration when the air pressure seemed to shift, like something invisible and heavy had entered the Roosevelt room. His final words, a war with the future, weren't just a dramatic punchline. They were a warning. One Navarro couldn't laugh off. Elon didn't sit back down. He stood tall, unmoving, his eyes sweeping across the stunned room of policy advisors, economic strategists, and security officials, daring someone, anyone, to respond. But then, something happened that no one, not even Musk, anticipated. From the far side of the room, a voice spoke. Calm, young, clear. I think Mr. Musk should see this. All eyes turned. The voice belonged to a junior staffer, Cameron Hale, barely 30, clean-cut, Harvard tie. Known for being one of Navarro's rising stars in policy modeling. Nobody paid him much attention before this moment. Just another spreadsheet whisperer in the background. But now, he was holding a flash drive between 2 fingers. Trembling slightly. Navarro's face turned ashen. Cameron, he said sharply, what are you doing? Hale didn't answer Navarro. He turned to Musk. I've been tracking internal communications in the Red Fence network. I copied the backups. I think you're not supposed to see what's really going on. He stepped forward, ignoring the gasps. Ignoring the firestorm of Navarro's glare. Elon looked at the drive, then at Cameron. How long have you been collecting this? Since February. After I saw the first internal memo suggesting ways to limit Tesla's scalability without direct confrontation. That language was in a draft Navarro signed off on. The room erupted. Navarro's chair scraped back loudly. That is a lie, he growled. You have no idea what you're talking about. But Hale pressed on. You're not just advocating tariffs. You're gaming sabotage, recommending regulatory traps, misdirected FAA audits, and even compromising Musk's satellite launches through coordinated airspace restrictions. That's not policy. That's warfare. The silence was deafening. The room had stopped breathing. Navarro stepped forward now, slow, deliberate, his face hardening into something darker. You just ended your career, kid, he whispered. You think the people who run this town are going to protect you? Elon held out his hand. Hale placed the drive in his palm without hesitation. I'm not here to be protected, the young man said. I'm here to make sure this doesn't become history rewritten in someone else's favor. Musk pocketed the drive, then looked at Navarro, not like a rival, but like a man assessing a collapsed star. You forgot the first rule of disruption, Elon said coldly. You can't control the fallout when the truth explodes. He turned to leave, but just as his hand reached the doorknob, another voice called out. One of the security techs stationed in the hallway, breathless, urgent. There's been a breach, he said. Navarro turned, visibly shaken. Another one. The men nodded. But not in communications. In infrastructure. A large screen was wheeled into the room by another aide. The tech tapped a button, and within seconds, satellite images and data streams filled the display. The footage was shocking. Tesla's gigafactory in Nevada had been hit. Not an explosion. Something more subtle. More dangerous. An electromagnetic frequency disruption had paralyzed nearly 37% of its core assembly bots in the span of minutes. The source? A localized signal burst triangulated from a drone flying at illegal altitudes, one that vanished moments later over restricted federal land. No group had claimed it. No enemies had taken credit. But as Elon scanned the footage, he saw what others didn't, the signature of coordinated sabotage. This wasn't an attack by chance. It was proof. Navarro tried to spin it, but it was too late. Hale's data had already been decrypted. On that drive, messages tying Navarro's office to private contractors with military-grade jamming tech. Code names. Schedules. Payment chains. And worst of all, an internal email from Navarro's own assistant. Subject line. Begin Phase 2. Cripple Nevada. China will deny, and will just leak the blame. Everything Musk feared, confirmed. And worse. Someone wanted the world to think a foreign government was behind it. Why? Because Navarro had planned something bigger than sabotage. He had orchestrated a trade war with a phantom enemy to consolidate power at home. By the time Elon Musk reached the Pentagon, the city outside had begun to pulse with tension. News of the Nevada factory incident had leaked, barely a whisper in the press, but it was enough. Rumors spread like brushfire: cyber attack, technical glitch, foreign interference. No one mentioned the drone. No one mentioned Navarro. Not yet. Inside the Pentagon's secured intelligence wing, Musk sat in a cold, windowless chamber. The kind where secrets were born and buried. Across from him were three senior officials from the Defense Industrial Base Task Force. Their expressions were practiced, polite, unreadable. On the table between them sat Cameron Hale's decrypted flash drive, plugged into a secure terminal. No one had spoken in nearly 3 minutes. And then came the words that would shift everything. "We've known about this plan for 2 months," said the woman at the center of the panel, her voice like polished steel. Elon didn't flinch, but something behind his eyes sparked. "Then why didn't you stop it?" She leaned forward, folding her hands. "Because stopping it would expose the network. And the network runs deeper than Navarro." That was when Musk realized, Peter Navarro was never the mastermind. He was a distraction. A fuse lit to conceal the real bomb. The official continued. "The sabotage you witnessed. The leaked Operation Gravity Kill files. They weren't just drafted by trade advisors. They were authored, covertly, by a joint private-public enterprise known as Echo Meridian." Musk had never heard the name. But as she pulled up the classified briefing, the logo appeared, a clean minimalist wave pattern, paired with a single phrase: strategic leverage through disruption. Echo Meridian wasn't a think tank. It was a quiet war engine. A hybrid initiative created years earlier under the guise of economic defense. Funded by shadow portfolios linked to multiple administrations, its mission was simple: protect U.S. economic dominance, even if it meant sacrificing innovators inside its own borders. Tesla. SpaceX. Starlink. Too big, too global, too autonomous. Echo Meridian viewed Musk as a liability. "They've already made moves on other companies," the official said, flipping through slides that never made the news: a targeted fiber disruption in Austin that shuttered a biotech lab for 2 days, a falsified EPA violation that shut down a lithium mine tied to Tesla's future battery supply, the sudden disappearance of a whistleblower in the aerospace sector. Every piece clicked into place. This wasn't a war for trade. It was a cleansing of any tech titan whose infrastructure could one day operate without government sanction. "You're saying I'm the test case?" Musk asked finally, voice low. "No," said the official. "You're the first public test case. But you've got something they didn't expect." "What's that?" She paused. Then, a voice loud enough to shake the planet. And that was the problem. Because now Echo Meridian would accelerate. Musk stood, pacing slowly. His mind was already ahead, calculating countermeasures, public disclosures, private alliances. But then the second official, a younger man in a gray suit, cleared his throat. "There's more," he said. "Echo Meridian isn't just watching you. They've already moved on your inner circle." Elon turned sharply. Define moved. We intercepted chatter last night. Someone close to your global operations team, one of your logistics directors, was approached. Coerced. They were given a choice: cooperate, or watch their family become a footnote in a diplomatic incident overseas. Elon's breath tightened. Who? We're still confirming, but the signal traces point to your Berlin line. Whoever it was, they rerouted shipping manifests from Germany to throw off your Shanghai factory schedules. They were feeding your own systems false data, delays, sabotage orders, redirected raw materials. Even SpaceX's launch window rotations had been tampered with. They're not trying to take you down overnight, the woman said. They're bleeding your timeline, making your empires look like they're crumbling from within. Musk's hands clenched slightly, but he didn't explode. He whispered, almost to himself, that's why they're losing. The officials looked confused. Elon turned toward the screen. Because I built companies that run on vision. And the one thing they can't fake, delay, or counterfeit. He stopped. Then he said it. Is momentum. The officials exchanged glances. Elon was already calculating how to weaponize the next news cycle, how to speak without speaking, how to leverage every enemy mistake into fuel. But then came a final twist. The woman at the center slid a second flash drive across the table. This wasn't supposed to be found. Musk picked it up. Unlabeled. Unreadable. Encrypted with a protocol last used by DARPA in '07, she added. Inside is something terrifying. Project designation, Scion Civ. And what's Scion Civ? Musk asked. Her voice barely above a whisper. It's not about sabotaging your companies anymore. It's about replacing them. The flash drive was cold in Elon's palm as he left the Pentagon that night. Not figuratively. Literally. It had a thermal regulator embedded, a precaution, perhaps, to prevent overheating or tampering. That alone told him everything he needed to know. This wasn't just data. It was a weapon. Back in his secure command suite above the Tesla HQ in Austin, Texas, the room was silent but alive with subtle tension. Thick steel walls, AI firewalls, satellite link backups, and a hand-picked team of 5 trusted engineers were the only witnesses as Musk loaded the drive into an isolated, offline terminal. The encryption was brutal. But it only took Elon an hour. And when the file finally cracked open, no one in the room breathed. Scion Civ wasn't just a plan. It was a simulation, fully AI modeled, government commissioned, and signed off under black budget authority 3 years earlier. Its goal? To model and execute a post-Musk economic landscape. But it wasn't theoretical. It was already live. Page 1. Simulated collapse sequence, Phase 1, reputation degradation via viral, incompetency leaks. Expected duration, 7 weeks. Page 2. Phase 2, financial glitches in automated investor algorithms seeded by rogue quant trading firms, covertly incentivized via Echo Meridian intermediaries. Page 3. Phase 3, AI-powered corporate clones. That last one, Elon paused on. The documents revealed that a parallel task force under Scion Civ had been training LLMs, large language models, and industrial AI twins built using illegally scraped Tesla, SpaceX, and Starlink internal logs. These AI clones were being used to simulate Musk's leadership style, decision trees, even speech patterns, with the aim to replace him. Not destroy him. Replace him. Run his companies through synthetic replicas. AI Musk. With a human face and a fake heart. Even Neuralink had been breached. An offshoot lab in Zurich had already begun tests where predictive modeling based on Elon's historical communications could produce strategic decisions 78% identical to his own in crisis scenarios. Jesus, one of the engineers muttered. They're trying to phase you out. Elon stared at the line of code. His digital fingerprint, his legacy, reduced to an executable framework. And then came the final folder. Hidden inside a nested file named innocuously as assets_deferred. Inside. A list of alternative leadership candidates. Billionaires, influencers, even a handful of rising tech prodigies, most with public personas designed to mimic aspects of Elon. Adventurous. Disruptive. Visionary. But each one, controllable. Every single name had been marked pliable. And beside Elon's name, a single word, in red. Non-compliant. He stood slowly, as if the air had thickened with smoke. They're not trying to beat me, he said quietly. They're trying to edit me out. The room was silent. Then, a second screen lit up, a Starlink emergency channel, blinking with priority override. It was a live feed. Someone had triggered a full-scale orbital rerouting of over 40 satellites from the new generation Starlink mesh. Unauthorized. Impossible, unless you had admin clearance. Elon's eyes narrowed. Berlin. That was the final card Echo Meridian had kept close, an insider. And now, whoever they were shifting satellites to reroute military bandwidth, framing Elon as compromising U.S. air defense for private gain. It would go public within hours. The headlines had likely already been drafted. Emergency protocol, one of the engineers asked, sweat beading. Elon didn't answer. He just stared. And then, he smiled. Not because he was calm, but because this was exactly what he'd been waiting for. He walked to the far end of the room and unlocked a drawer. Inside was a private uplink device, Project Hades. A back channel he had built years ago, after watching too many regulatory games nearly destroy innovation. It was a dead switch. A burn trigger. One that didn't just shut things down, it exposed them. All right, he said, voice cool. It's time to play their game in reverse. He activated the switch. Within seconds, thousands of internal communications from Echo Meridian began flooding media outlets worldwide. The Scion-Civ simulations were uploaded to public Git archives by anonymous whistleblowers Musk had prepped weeks earlier. Deepfake audio used to simulate Elon's voice in foreign call logs was revealed, frame by frame, disproven by metadata. And the final move. Elon appeared live. Not on cable news. Not on a stage. He broadcast directly to Starlink's global mesh, uncensorable, uncut, unavoidable. His eyes locked onto the lens. They thought they could replace me with an algorithm. They forgot what makes us human is the ability to see through the illusion. I built companies that reach the stars, not so we could escape this planet, but so we'd remember what we're capable of. To those who think they can clone leadership, understand this. You can duplicate a voice. You can't duplicate a vision. The world stopped. The stock market paused. Echo Meridian fractured from within. And Scion-Civ. It was over before Phase 4 ever began. Because the one variable no simulation accounted for was Elon Musk going off script.